cheers to Sir Nathaniel Songbird for his magnificent hospitality this evening, and I thank all of you for your company and entertaining us with your glorious tales, gentlemen and ladies. I very much appreciate the extension of an invitation to join you this evening, and I would like to thank Mayor Wolfenson as well for his invitation to tell my most fantastic tale of how I raised the entire London National Cemetery with but a wooden nickel and the incompetent help of my uncle's twice-removed cousin's former roommate, thereby starting a war between London's vampires and the mysterious covenant of Antarctica. We should begin with my interest in the occult. I have particular fascination with all things mysterious, all things supernatural throughout history, concerning magic and demons and all these sorts of unnatural occurrences. And many of the shelves in many of my reading rooms are filled with such volumes. And I had in recent years taken particular interest in the writings of our own Aleister Crowley, and in poring through some of his manuscripts late one night, I had discovered that there were many suggestions that he had found a way to travel between time and space, that he had somehow discovered a means to travel great distances in but a few moments, and he could travel across the world in the blink of an eye. This piqued my interest very particularly, but then I discovered that he was making trips to very remote regions of the world, or at least he had encrypted a code into some of his manuscripts with his correspondence. And he had suggested that he had made several trips to the Antarctic regions. It was then when it dawned upon me the most heinous revelation that he was in fact gathering a cult of followers to practice some sort of ancient, sinister blood magic. Well, of course, this was shocking, and I had to understand the method behind his madness. I had to understand the goal, the plot that he was going forth with this cult. And I found that through this blood magic he was planning to enslave the minds of all of our Majesty's kingdoms, and not just that, but the entire world, beginning with Europe and Asia. He wanted to dominate everyone in the world by manipulating these ancient rituals and summoning great demons. And so I took it upon myself to oppose this. I knew that I could not make this information directly public without first providing some sort of evidence that I wasn't myself a raving lunatic. So it came to my mind, again through my occult wanderings, that there was a certain Count, Olaf Sigismund in Transylvania, who I thought might be of most assistance to me. And so I gathered together my things, but the problem was that I myself did not speak Transylvanian. I am fluent in many languages, but Transylvanian, I regret to inform you, is not among them. So there came the issue of finding a translator before I could depart. So I sought out many possible prospects, and yet none of them I felt entirely confident of. Well, my uncle had approached me one evening and told me that he knew of his cousin's roommate, who was in fact fluent in Transylvanian, a young gentleman named Edward Kirk DeWitt, who I had never met before, but upon meeting him I must admit I was not entirely impressed. A very withdrawn, clumsy, rather frail fellow who was not very outspoken. But, taking my uncle's advice, I decided that we needed to make best haste if we were to stop Sir Crowley's evil plots. Once I had reached Europe's mainland, once we had reached Amsterdam, I decided that we would travel overland by ostrich, because I myself am a very talented trainer of Her Majesty's Royal Ostriches, and to the properly trained rider, and with a properly purely bred and fit ostrich, one can actually travel nearly the speed of a train overland, and one can access areas that train tracks cannot traverse. So it was but 2 days since we left Amsterdam, though it was a very much maligned 2 days, for that De Witt was not a very worldly individual, and there were many stops that had to be made in order to accommodate his various ailments and other eccentricities. But we finally arrived in Transylvania at Count Olaf Sigismund's castle, and when we approached him, I noticed De Witt was acting very nervous upon me. He continued to cast his eyes warily in my direction. So I pulled him aside, because I was not going to have I was not going to risk any such upset in the Count's presence. So I pulled De Witt aside, and it was only then that he admitted to me that it was not in fact Transylvanian that he was fluent in, but a very obscure dialect of Pennsylvanian, much to my distaste and chagrin. And so I would be sure to have a word with my uncle after this. But anyway, through sheer charm and the use of extremes of body language, I was able to communicate with the Count and convince him to return with me to London, so that we had devised a plan that if this was a blood cult that we were in fact going to be opposing, that it made the most sense, if we were to raise an army to oppose them, that it should be a vampire army, an army that could steal the blood that was going to be the very source of their power. And so we set about to begin the lengthy and complicated rituals that would begin resurrecting all of the corpses in London's National Cemetery, to turn them into an army of vampires that we could throw against Aleister's cult. It was very unfortunate, though met with a bit of irony on my part, that it was De Witt who I was assigning the task of excavating many of the corpses, and it was amongst the very first vampires that we had successfully conjured that actually consumed him, and he was but no more. But we managed to make the best of the situation by turning De Witt himself into one of our vampires. Now, in order to complete this ritual, in order to seal the power, in order to be able to control this army of the undead, Count Sigismund required a specific token. He needed something that was imbued with great power, and it was very fortunate for me that I had in my possession, inherited from my great-great-aunt, some very peculiar relics of her travels across the world, and one of which was a peculiar wooden shingle, a little token that was given to her by an aboriginal shaman in Australia. And this thing apparently held great power, and it was bound to the spirit world, and it entitled its possessor, provided that they understood the proper rituals, to control the spirits, control demons, control supernatural entities. And with this, Count Sigismund and I were able to control the army and throw them against the emerging cults, the waves of demonically possessed cultists that Sir Crowley was going to send upon Her Majesty's great kingdom. And how I won that war and its exact outcome is perhaps a story for another day. But I see that Imam Kareem Naseem, he has just entered the room. Please, sir, if you would, there's brandy and cigars over on the table over there. If you would take some for yourself. It is very good to see you. Since perhaps we're at a good point to shift the attention over to our new guest here, tell us, Imam, how it was that you masqueraded as the Dalai Lama for 7 years in order to win the hand of the daughter of the King of Spain. There are some particulars of this story that I am ashamed to say have escaped my ears. Please, entertain us.